While Alberta may have literally been in flames, Ontario was in a much worse proverbial fire. So off I went aboard my Air Canada Flight 175, cruising at flight level 340 on the recently recertified Boeing 737 MAX 8 with the registration number Charlie Foxtrot Sierra India Papa. The 10-year-old version of me who wanted to be a pilot was really geeking himself out at flying. After a 4-hour flight and some poutine that was actually half decent, we landed in Edmonton. The next morning, after a quick breakfast, it was off to Grace Life Church before heading to Fort Edmonton. Fort Edmonton was actually really well done, and it took you through the history of how Edmonton became a city in a super practical ways. They even had their own steam train that took you through the park. The next morning, it was up at 4 a.m. to go see Elk Island National Park before sunrise. Other than two incredibly rude bison who were blocking the path and wouldn't let anyone by, this was a great park to visit. Obviously, you can't go through Edmonton without making a stop at the West Edmonton Mall. It almost made me forget that I have a strong distaste of shopping malls. Skating in the middle of July is something I would recommend every Canadian do at least once. After a long drive, I arrived at Jasper National Park where I was able to check out Malign Canyon. The next morning, I was once again up early so I could make it out to the Athabasca Glacier and go on a hike. There was only one other person on the hike, and the guide was super knowledgeable. Other than that, it was a little bit smoky. The water actually tasted really good. Getting to break out the ropes and rappel down into a crevasse was actually really cool. A short drive down the road was Parker's Ridge. It was a trail using a lot of switchbacks to get you up above the tree line and to the top of a mountain, where the views were absolutely breathtaking. Photos just simply cannot do it justice. The next day was my driving day as I made my way down towards Banff, but that didn't mean that I didn't have time to make a few extra hikes along the way. As I was coming up to the ruins of the old hot springs, there was just something about walking through the woods and coming upon signs of human civilization that just felt like you'd walked straight into Narnia. Oh, and there was also hot water flowing out of holes in the rock. This water was about 50 degrees Celsius, and it just kind of felt strange to be feeling super hot water being piped out of the rock. This trail was supposed to be stroller friendly, but I'm not entirely sure what kind of strollers they use in Alberta yet. It was back out on the road for a few minutes before arriving at Sunwapta Falls. The next day there was some more driving out towards Johnson Canyon, while obviously stopping, of course, to take some lookouts along the way. you ever find yourself saying, you know what, I just really need a challenge right now? Well, for me, that was Mount Rundle, climbing all the way up to the top of the peak at 2,948 meters. It was pretty much all loose gravel all the way up to the top, along with a very steep incline, and some spots that were questionable whether they're actually a rock scramble or whether you should call them a rock climb. The view at the top, even with all the smoke, was absolutely worth it though. There's just something about watching all the helicopters flying around well below where you're standing that is very cool. Because of the loose gravel, even the descent had a very high degree of difficulty. It was next off to Mausley where I caught the Twilight Tour train. At first I was sitting by myself, but this did not last long, however, as I started to explore the train and the cast started to interact with me. This entire staff has way too much fun with their work, and after I was dragged into the show, one of the girls actually married me. Perks of being the only single non-drunk guy on the train. After she had joined me at the table for a pie date, I spent the rest of the night defending her from thugs and getting into fights.
Oh, thank you, sir. No, this is a man who values his life. The whole world is spinning.
The next morning I visited the Cave and Basin National Historical Site, of which no video exists. Afterwards I went and visited Banff, which was incredibly touristy, but it did offer some great views of the mountain I just climbed. So I went and rented a kayak, and I kayaked down the Bow River for about 7 kilometers. I met a bear along the way. He was nice. There was still daylight out, so there was still time to travel into British Columbia to visit Marble Canyon. Marble Canyon had been ravaged by a forest fire in 2003, so it was cool to see the old burnt remains of the old forest while the new forest started to grow up underneath it. The next morning there was time for one more hike and one more drive through Banff National Park before I had to head to church and go home. Tim Stevens preached a great sermon from Luke 2. After saying goodbye to my car, it was also time to say goodbye to Calgary.
Les mesures de sécurité suivantes. Vous trouverez devant vous une carte des mesures.
This time flying on a WestJet Flight 676 aboard the Boeing 737-8 with the tail number Charlie Golf Echo Hotel Foxtrot, cruising at flight level 350. Flying business class meant I got a snack, a full meal, and a dessert box. A few hours later, it was time for the trip to come to an end.
Question 616, you're cleared RNAV X-ray approach runway 05.
Cleared RNAV X-ray approach 05, West